Before the 1840s, Auburn was still little more than a dusty crossroads. Drawn by the growing number of schools and the promise of formal education for their children, slave owners from nearby Harris County, Georgia, uprooted their families and human chattel and moved to the tiny hamlet. Before the Methodist East Alabama Male College, now Auburn University, opened its doors in 1859, the Auburn Female College was the area's seat of higher education. Public lectures were offered at the Methodist Church, but the townspeople soon deemed the sacred space unfit for such secular purposes. In 1846, they raised enough funds to build a chapel for the newly renamed Auburn Masonic Female College at the corner of what are now Magnolia and Gay Streets, with the largest auditorium in eastern Alabama. Endless political debates and stump speeches reverberated between these four walls, and the building became the area's political nerve center. One debate rose head and shoulders above the rest in importance. By the spring of 1860, the controversy over the expansion of slavery tore through the fabric of American politics, and many wondered if they were witnessing the last gasps of the American experiment. In April of 1860, future Vice President of the Confederacy Alexander Stephens, anti-secessionist William G. Parson Brownlow from Knoxville, Alabama fire eater William Lowndes Yancey, the orator of the South, and future Confederate Secretary of State Robert Toombs hotly debated the issue of secession at the Masonic Chapel. The secessionists, who far outnumbered the anti-secessionists, carried the day. The nation lumbered ever closer to war and final dissolution. When Confederate forces bombarded Fort Sumter just 1 year later in April of 1861, the Auburn Masonic Female College closed its doors and the chapel stood empty for 3 years. When the tide of war finally turned in the Union's favor by the spring of 1864, the Masonic Chapel found new life. In July, Confederate casualties from the nearby battle surrounding Atlanta overwhelmed the city's infrastructure, and officials were forced to evacuate the sick, wounded, and dying to nearby towns. Many of these men ended up in Auburn, and a makeshift hospital was erected in the Masonic Chapel. The same four walls that once reverberated with hearty cries for secession now merely echoed the whimper and moan of men taking their final labored breaths. In 1883, after a fire on campus, Auburn's administration moved the chapel to its present location, bricked it over, and renamed it Langdon Hall, after Charles Carter Langdon, an Auburn trustee and former Alabama Secretary of State. It soon became the center of Civil War memory in the region, annually hosting speeches and programs. It stands today as the oldest building in the city of Auburn.